Hi everyone. I thought in this video I'd do something different than just show you guys, me working on my workshop again. I thought I'd make a video on my Mustang. But before I get to where I got it, why I got it, or how I got it, I thought it might be a good idea to show you guys where my fascination with this car actually came from. Just like a lot of other people, I got raised in the 80s and 90s. And because of that, I also got raised by perhaps the greatest generations of cartoons ever. I remember as a kid sitting down on Saturday morning to watch Ninja Turtles, the Thundercats, and perhaps the most formative one for me yet, the Transformers. The latter started my fascination with mechanical stuff, ranging from toys that could transform to taking apart radios and putting them back together again. And of course, as any kid in the 90s, I was glued to the TV playing NES games. I loved playing them, except for that one level, and yeah, if you had an NES back in the day, this level would give anyone PTSD levels of anxiety. But once my dad found out I was mechanically inclined, he tried to teach me how to go about it in the correct way, stuff like fixing the car. In other words, the generational trauma of holding a light and getting yelled at for doing it wrong. But I got to spend time with the old man, so as a kid, I was happy enough. The biggest pastime he and I had was watching old movies, the good, the bad, the ugly, Where Eagles Dare, Bruce Lee movies, and maybe most importantly, Bullet and Gone in 60 Seconds. And those movies got us talking about how great it would be to someday build our own. Not one from the 90s, though. No. We wanted one from the 60s because those always seemed to be our favorites for some reason. And as a kid, I could not shut up about this. And this set my general fascination with cars, the cartoons, the movies, everything combined. This kind of set me up on a long journey of being a dumbass teen, helping my friends with quote unquote tuning their cars, as I was the only one in the group who actually had any hands on experience with creating parts, spray painting, fiberglass, and bonding. So, at best, yeah, our stuff was bad. That was tuning in the early 2000s. It was just bad in general. But to be completely honest, now's not really a lot better. And then over the years, we kind of forgot about the Mustang until one day, unfortunately, my old man passed away way too early. And then less than a year after that, we all headed into a lockdown. And I did the only thing I could think of, which was rewatching a lot of the old movies we once loved, and a couple I've not seen in a long time, mainly The Fast and the Furious and John Wick. At that point, I kind of realized we never got to the point of making our own project car. So I bit the bullet, pun not intended, and went looking for a classic car. As John Wick at the time has become one of my favorite movies over the years, so I thought, if I'm gonna get a fastback, I might as well gonna get a Mach 1. And luckily enough, I found one. Now, looking back, this might have been the dumbest purchase I've ever made. Because at the time, I've not worked on cars for a little over a decade. And I originally thought, you know what, this isn't going to be so bad. A little bit of elbow grease and a can-do attitude, and I got this. And yeah, on the outside, the car I got, it looked good, but some dull paint here or there, that's not too bad. The inside looked like it'd seen better days, but it was all functional. How much could carpet cost? Like $100, right? Yeah, that's about it. Oh man, how wrong I was. After I got this baby home, I found out there were loads of problems with the car, ranging from rusted out chassis parts to rusted out bottom plates, bad electrical wiring, shorting, and more. So this is where I started looking for help, and man, did I find it. I, fortunately enough, found a mechanic that over the years would become a very close friend of mine. And as you can see in the pictures, the inside is rough as hell. The insulation that was beneath the seats had turned into something a little more like caked on dust. And once I lifted the center console, it looked like Scratch from Ice Age had spent his life in here. Like there were so many nuts and everything in there, it was insane. But once I got everything out, including the carpet, I could finally see the floorboards, and they were a complete mess. I could literally Flintstone this thing home. So I made a call. Instead of patching up bits and pieces and making this thing look like repaired Swiss cheese, we decided let's do this properly and just rip out the entire engine bay and the floors and everything else that had rust on it, because in the end, it would be cheaper to just replace everything and it would look better if we just replaced everything instead of just doing, the regular patchwork. And once we actually got started on removing the minor rust we did see, this turned out to be the right call because, as always, the bit of rust you can see is only the tip of the iceberg. The new sheet metal we ended up putting on looked amazing. It was a night and day difference. So, in my book, this was the right call for sure. We even felt so strongly that we ended up redoing most of the trunk, as there was rust on there as well. But hey, once you get started, there's no going back. As you can see, eventually, when we started doing this was really, really the right call. The inside then got hit by epoxy primer just to make sure that any and all problems on the floorboards that might get, moisture on it due to wet shoes or anything else was not going to be a problem in the future. And once we gave the butt end of the car the much needed attention it needed, we basically restored it as much as we could. This by adding new sheet, seam sealing everything, and respraying it. We also jerry rigged all the separate parts of the car, like suspension, closing mechanisms, and all sorts of stuff to give it a new, shiny, glossy black finish. And now for the big one, the engine bay. If you order reproduction parts from, for example, Dynacorn, they get delivered in something called a weld-through primer. This looks decent at first as it's matte black, and this could actually work for whatever application you're thinking of. This does not really give you any protection, and if it even gives you some, it's minimal at best. So we decided to just spray paint everything in some nice 2K paint and clear coat. This way, everything has a nice protective layer, and seeing oil, grease, and gasoline and other stuff that's on, in, or near an engine, you kind of want that extra protection to be there where you can just wipe everything off and it's clean again. So if you yourself are redoing your engine bay, give this some thought. Same was on the program for the back. Seeing my Mustang got a new butt, it needed to also color match the classical paint job colors or go for a black stripe. And to be honest, I chose the original color for the time because I didn't want it to look gaudy. We even ended up doing the inside of the trunk, which it's a little detail, but it's the little details that matter in the end. After this, I decided instead of trying to repair the old wiring harness, let's just throw a new one in there. A modern one, a more reliable working wire harness. I decided to go with the brand Painless Wiring. They had an install kit for a 1969 Mustang, which was basically a direct replacement. And to be honest, it worked like a charm. Even 3 years later right now that I still have the car, the painless wiring is still holding up. It's not throwing any bugs out there. It's not grounding or shorting. It's doing an amazing job. I'll most likely do a separate video showing how the wiring is most easily installed, as once I was doing this, I couldn't really find one. And to be honest, I've worked on cars before, but doing the entire harness from scratch was kind of daunting to me. Plus, if you want to run modern style LED headlights for better visibility, you need to do a couple of modifications. So I'll draw those up with that video and post them on my Patreon just in case anybody ever needs these. And of course, the first thing I hooked up was the radio because, hey, if we're going to work, we might as well work on a car that has some tunes so we can enjoy ourselves, right? The radio I ended up using was a retro sound. I believe it's the Laguna. I'm not entirely sure on that. This is basically because I wanted to have an old school look, but a modern sound. And most importantly to me, Bluetooth. So if I get called, I don't have to put the car on the side of the road. I can just pick it up and keep driving. And that's where we kind of finished off the car. It's basic, but she was ready for her first test drive. So that's kind of where we are left right now. The car is basic, it's working, but I'm still thinking, what next? Well, if you're thinking the same, that's good because I have a lot of plans for this car. As I plan at one point to use her as a daily driver, I think it's good to invest in a decent transmission. And I've looked far and wide, and the transmission I ended up selecting was a T56 6-speed Tremec instead of the 4-speed that I currently have in here. This should translate into a smoother and more fuel economical drive than what I have right now. And it gives me the option of one day pushing more horsepower out of this baby without any trouble whatsoever. Because if you've ever worked on cars, if you try to keep the original clutch, especially an old one like this, and you're going over 300, 400 horsepower, yeah, your transmission is going to be your weak link as it's basically pushing the power into the wheels. Next, after that, is the Holley Sniper 2 EFI system. This is in part for fuel economy, but also reliability. For as a daily driver, anyone who has ever driven an old car knows in a winter, these babies can be trying sometimes. You're gonna have to flood the engine to basically make her start, and with the EFI system, it should basically start with no problem whatsoever. After that, I'll be installing a 4-link suspension, as this is also something I've been looking at because of the plain and simple reason I want to improve handling. And if you know anything about these old Mustangs, it's that these babies love crowds and they hate roads which aren't straight as an arrow. This could translate into less body roll and better handling in corners. This will be combined with what comes after that, the rack and pinion. This seems to be the best bang for your buck as it comes to handling, as I've been able to find up until now. This in theory should get rid of any steering bump that I could have. It should improve handling in corners massively, along with the added power steering. So this is kind of a no-brainer for me, and I might actually move this one way up the list. And last but not least, internals. Because your car can drive fine and handle ultimately perfect, but if your seats aren't comfortable and you're not having a comfortable driving experience, you're not going to want to drive that car as much as you initially wanted to. Ask me how I know. So I'll be looking into a good set of seats, maybe Recaro, maybe Sparco, maybe something else entirely. But good seats are really important from a safety point of view, from a comfortable point of view, and anything that I can think of. Alongside this is actually the reason why I also wanted to start this channel, mainly 3D printing. This could be, for example, be used to create a custom dashboard so we can have a modern day navigation system, which could otherwise only be possible by cutting up an existing dashboard. But with 3D printing, the sky is kind of the limit here. And another good part is if we look for internal parts, it either won't fit as it should because it's a reproduction piece, and reproduction pieces are actually known for fitment issues. Or it will be brittle as hell because it's a 60-year-old piece of fiberglass. And with 3D printing, we kind of circumvent both those issues. And not just the dashboard, but the center console could also use an upgrade. So we can try to make one by traditional means with MDF, routers, and jigs, or we could 3D print something and create something that was not possible to do with traditional means. Like, for example, add in a dedicated spot to have window regulators, electrical windows, electrical mirrors, you name it. Again, imagination is kind of our only limit when it comes to this stuff. Same goes for the center console. As this baby does look the part, it still looks good, it just doesn't have the modern functionality that I'd like it to have, like being able to store a drink, or if I put in electric windows, have regulators in there. You know, there are a lot of different ways to do this, but for me, I think 3D printing is going to be a very, very big part of this project. So that leads us to where we are now. I'm basically planning on resto modding this entire car using traditional techniques, 3D printing, laser cutting, and everything else I can get my hands on. So if you guys have any ideas or any input whatsoever on what you would like to see in a video, be it wiring, 3D printing, 3D development, looking at painting the car, looking at very specific niche subjects of resto modding or cars in general, let me know. So leave a comment, let me know what you guys would like to see, even if it's wiring the car or it's a very niche subject, be it anything really. Let me know down in the comments and let's see what we can make together. As always, I'm Ren, and see you guys next time.